I'm delighted to bring on Brooks Newmark. He is a Conservative Member of Parliament for Braintree, and he is, I think, served as the Lord Commissioner of the HMS Treasury. When I put that up on my Facebook, someone said, "Can we ask him for a loan?" Brooks, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us in Spain today.
Delighted to join you.
Yeah, there you are. So are you HMS Treasury Commissioner, Lord Commissioner? Sounds very nice title, that.
Well, fun enough, I was until last October, actually. I'm now back on the Treasury Select Committee. But just for your listeners, the Lord Commissioner of the Treasury is the guy who writes the government checks.
Wow.
So in fact, the largest check that I signed was one for the Irish government, which I think was for around £3.6 billion, which I did keep a copy of as a memento.
Brilliant. Actually, that you should put. Did you put that on your? I was looking at your Facebook. You didn't put the photograph up of it, did you? That would have been brilliant.
Yes, I did. I did. Interesting enough, just so you listeners know, as a point of history, what used to happen is the government used to effectively deposit in your account the money for which you were writing a check for. So I asked Mr. Osborne at the time, I said, "Great, will you please deposit, as is tradition, the £3.6 billion into my account, so at least I get the overnight interest on it?" He says, "Sure, Brooks, if you're prepared to take on the liability," to which at that stage I thought better not.
I would have taken on the liabilities straight away. So I believe the Irish government now are applying to Simon Cowell for the next loan. That's what I hear.
Yep, you know what, and he can definitely afford it nowadays.
He can write it out, he certainly can. That's when he's not playing with eggs. Now, over a period of 5 years, Brooks, you have met Assad several times, always one-to-one, and you've also met his English-born wife. As events, you write there, as events have now shown, he's willing to destroy Syria completely, you say, and kill his people in vast numbers to protect his family. In effect, Syria is a mafia state, so you say. Let's talk about that and why you come to that conclusion.
Well, one of the things that, I always had a huge interest in was that, Syria was always a sort of pariah state anyway in the West, particularly given its relationship with Iran, given its effectively shipping arms through to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. I've always been a great believer that even if you don't sort of like people or like what they do, it's very important, no matter what, to try and engage with them, to try and talk with them, to try and persuade them, if at all possible, to change their mind, change their ways, and sort of bring them into dealing with normal forms of behavior. And this is something that was obviously a huge challenge, but nevertheless, I just thought was important. And I had a number of opportunities to meet President Assad. Basically, I suspect he, in an odd way, enjoyed seeing me, because I was very direct with him, but I could be direct with him in private without necessarily throwing brickbats at him in public. And we always had a forthright debate. And one of the points he always, made to me was that regime survival was very important. And I said to him, well, I know you say regime survival is important to you, but at the same time you keep talking about political reform. And there is a contradiction in saying you want political reform, yet at the same time you talk about regime survival. And he could never really answer that question clearly for me. And as we've seen today, I think he's put regime survival ahead of political reform.
Well, there's a few questions I want to put, and thanks for joining us here in Spain today, Brooks. I'm delighted you have. A few questions I want to put you, more questions I want to put about. As we know that Syria, I think the numbers now are mounting close to 100,000 dead, or thereabouts. It will certainly mount to that. And if this carries on, you say that this time next year we'll be counting bodies of 200,000 Syrians, which is unacceptable at any death of anyone's totally unacceptable. What surprises me, Brooks, to be honest with you, is your headline where you said it's time we arm the rebel. Well, it probably confuses me more. Time we arm the rebel army. And I say that because we know that the rebel army is infiltrated by Al-Qaeda. We know that Al-Qaeda possibly don't give a damn about Syria, but have their eyes and their noses on the chemical weapons that are there so they can help destroy Israel. Why you would arm these people indirectly, and I'm not saying you'd arm Al-Qaeda, but knowing that they would get those arms confuses me, knowing who you are, Brooks.
Well, I think one has to understand what's actually happening on the ground. And, it's a very asymmetrical war in which, you've got the Russians providing arms and money, and you've got the Iranians providing arms, money, tactical advice with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. You've got Hezbollah, on one side. You've got 16,000 bits of heavy artillery. You've got an air force unopposed in the sky. And today, while I've always said my agenda is negotiation, at this stage, Bashar Assad has no incentive whatsoever to come to the negotiating table, because we've been signaling all along we will not do anything to support the opposition. So notwithstanding the fact that the opposition have made huge gains with just small arms, to be honest, against tanks, against airplanes, against helicopters, against missiles. What has been happening as of late is that a very radical Islamist element under the banner of Jabhat al-Nusra have been gaining space. But the numbers are still fairly small. There's only about, according to estimates that I've heard, about 3,500 of them. But what's happening is the FSA, the fighters there, are getting frustrated that the better armed elements, unfortunately, are Jabhat al-Nusra and the extremists. And so they're effectively flaking away from the FSA and joining them. My argument is that, Syria is a highly secular country compared to the rest of the Middle East. They are not prone to Islamism. They're not prone to Salafism. They are a secular state. So, my worry is not that it's going to suddenly become an Afghanistan or an Iraq. What I'm worried about is that we will give more and more space to the radicals who are coming into Syria. And by not supporting the FSA, I know it sounds a little counterintuitive.
But it does sound counter because
it's not in that as I said, if we want Bashar Assad to come to the negotiating table, he has to believe there is a strong, credible force against him. And today, unfortunately,
he doesn't believe
being
that.
armed with small weapons, the FSA is not bringing him to the negotiating table. I believe that by arming the FSA, we are likely to accelerate the point with which we bring Bashar Assad to the negotiating table, rather than leaving him to continue slaughtering his own people.
It's a gamble. It is a gamble. Now, we've seen what's happened in Egypt. We've seen the promise by the Muslim Brotherhood that they would never interfere in government. We've seen the overthrow of Mubarak. And for me, and I suppose for the people of Egypt now, they're beginning to regret slightly what's happened there. What's a great worry, overthrow Assad, let the rebel army take control, and I think you've got chaos on your hands in the Middle East. Bottom line.
Well, you've got, unfortunately, both options are bad options.
They are
I'm
both.
trying to
they
choose
are both.
the least worst option.
Is it the worst?
You're absolutely right. There's going to be chaos either way. But if we do nothing for another 12 to 18 to 24 months, Syria itself will completely fragment. And it'll become a collapsed and broken state. I think there's a small chance, as I said, it's not even a large chance, a small chance that we can accelerate the point to which we bring Bashar Assad to the negotiating table by realizing he is not going to win this because he has no opposition. If he has a more robust opposition in the form of General Idris in the FSA, he is more likely to be drawn to the negotiating table.
I think it's a huge risk, that, but of course we live, thank God, in our part of a free world, and we're free to be able to at least express our opinions. In your article there you say that Assad had said, I am weak both economically and military. I cannot take on Israel directly. They are much stronger than me. It makes more sense to use Hezbollah to put pressure on Israel. Am I not right in saying that Syria has a peace agreement with Israel? So how does Israel come into the situation right now?
Well, Syria doesn't have a peace agreement with Israel. In fact, Syria has been at war with Israel technically since 1974. What has not been happening, it's been more of a Cold War rather than a hot war, with Israel now and then popping over the border and bombing the odd nuclear site that Bashar Assad has tried to set up, or attacking Hezbollah supply lines. What Bashar Assad has been doing is he recognizes he's not been strong enough, as he has said to me, both economically and militarily, to take Israel on directly. And so what he has been doing is using Hezbollah as a proxy to put pressure on Israel to try and give him back the Golan Heights. What I tried to persuade him to do, obviously failed, was to try and encourage him to enter negotiations with Israel on the Golan, with a deal in which perhaps he could get the Golan back if he broke off his relationship with Iran and ceased supplying arms to Hezbollah. Unfortunately, that was not a price he was willing to pay in order to get back the Golan, and we are where we are today.
We certainly are.